Hey, what's up guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here. Happy Saturday to you and welcome back to my weekly Q&A session where you guys ask the questions and I give you the answers. It's a very special week here on MythicTyrant.com. First of all, this is our 6-month anniversary for these Q&As, so I want you all to give yourselves a hand, especially because I know a lot of you have been here since day one and even predating the Q&A. So it's 6 months today. Congratulations, not just to me, but to all of you for participating. You guys are what makes this happen, and that's why I love doing these Q&As so much. It's my personal time with you guys, and it's so great. Also, this video brings a close to SPV3 week right here on MythicTyrant.com. SPV3 is obviously the new mod that is coming out. Based on Halo PC's extension Halo Custom Edition, and today you can actually purchase it. Not purchase it, but download it for free today. So definitely look that up. Huge congrats goes out to the CMT community and Masters Elite. I know you've spent many years working so hard on this just to produce it for us for free so we can enjoy this content for years to come. So definitely check that out. I'm so excited for it. You guys have seen me posting videos all week on SPV3, so you already have an idea of what you're getting. It's great. Definitely check it out as soon as you're done with this video. So if you're not familiar with how this works, it's pretty simple. If you want your question featured, all you got to do is post it in the comment section below. And so I'll look at it for next week. I usually pick about 10 to 12 questions every week. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at MythicTyrant. This week we've had actually the majority of the questions asked on Twitter. So I want to take the time out to thank everyone who's following me on Twitter. If you're not, you definitely want to do that. I do tend to hold those questions at a little bit more of a higher priority, not because they're more important than the ones in the comment section. They're all important. So definitely if you don't have Twitter, keep going in the comment section. But I feel like people have gone a little the extra mile just to follow me on there too, and you should for sure, because you get to see all my posts, you get to see me communicate with other Halo tubers and 343 and Bungie, and you get to get in on those conversations, so you definitely should check it out. Again, if you're not following me on there now, go ahead and pause this video, go on Twitter, and follow me at MythicTyrant. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Our first question of the week comes from K for Kyle. Well, I hope that's what K stands for, especially this week. And Kyle asks, what do you think is going to happen if the next major Halo game fails? So, obviously, Halo was first and foremost a video game franchise. I've heard people argue that before. Yeah, it's a game franchise, damn it. It's not going to look good for 343 Industries. Obviously, they're exploring other things they can do with Halo. They've talked about doing that Halo TV show. They obviously still have the book series. They're talking about film, comics, and graphic novelization, but it's not going to be the same because 343 primarily focuses on the games. They oversee the other stuff, but it's a gaming company first and foremost. So I think 343 could be running into some hard times if Halo 6 or the next major chapter in the Halo series fails, which is why I think they're taking a lot of extra time on it, and good for them. I hope it doesn't fail because I'd like to see Halo stick around for a while. So that's a great question, Kate, for Kyle, and thank you. Our next question comes from Dale Mixon. I make fun of him every time I see the name. I love you, man. But it just makes me think of Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. So always good to have you here, Dale. And he asks, would you like to see a Halo game where you play as an O&I agent, but not Locke, going on highly classified missions? Love your videos, man. Thanks, Dale. I appreciate it. It depends. So are we talking about like an ODST type soldier, or would they still have the Spartan armor? I can never pronounce it. Manjalore, whatever. It depends on how it's set out. I don't want it to be like just a regular everyday human. I can see super secret missions being fun. Maybe you get a little bit of backstory. All the secret stuff that you heard about maybe in ODST and other games like Reach, maybe you get to see the other side of that. I think it'd be an interesting idea. I'm not sure if it would be a great first-person shooter, but I could see a game evolving from that. So that's a great question, Dale. Thank you. Our next question comes from Elite Assassin DW. So is that Darkwing? And he asked, hey bro, love your vids. Thanks, Elite. I appreciate it. What do you think will happen if Arbiter Chief and Atriox meet in Halo 6? Well, it's not going to be a three-way, that's for sure. My guess is, I don't know if Arbiter knows who Atriox is and the other way around. I'm not sure when the severance occurred with the Banished and the Covenant. But I imagine it's going to be one of two things. Either they're going to be fighting the Banished, at least for the first half of the game or so, or they're going to be in a scenario where they're going up against Cortana, and they say, hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so maybe they team up briefly to go against Cortana and the Prometheans and any Storm Covenant that might be left. I think that could be a possibility, but I'm not sure. I don't know for sure that Atriox is going to be in Halo 6, but I think there's a good indicator since they did say that Halo Wars 2 will directly tie into the next major Halo title. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. So that's a great question, Elite Assassin. Thank you. Our next question comes from, oh geez, Fat Shit Studios. Is that a medical condition? And Fat Shit Studios asks, do you think Halo Escalation 9 should be fleshed out and made into a game? Not all fans read it and think the Didact died in Halo 4. I think any outside content should be in some shape or form a game. I know that not all of it necessarily fits in the gaming world, but it definitely needs to be explored in some way. I don't know if making a game around it would be the right way to go. It could be. You know, maybe it could be like the third chapter in the Spartan Assault series where you talk about, you know, what happened with the Didact and everything. That's a possibility. I think it's a way that you could play out those events so that people are familiar with it without completely derailing from the standard Halo formula. So that's a great question, and it's an interesting concept. So let's see what they think of that. It's a direction they could go for sure. So that's a great question, Fat Shit Studios. Sorry. Our next question comes from Spencer. And Spencer asks, when Halo stops producing content, how do you think that will affect the relevance of the Xbox since Halo is Xbox only? It definitely will have an impact, but Halo isn't the flagship that it once was. It still is to a point, but I see a lot of push from Microsoft to make more exclusive content. You see Gears of Wars and so forth. And we even talked about, I think, either last week or the week before, if Halo should ever become cross-platform. To be honest with you, I'm not sure it would affect it that much, because keep in mind, Microsoft also owns Windows, and so they have a lot of games that come out exclusive for PC as well. Some share Xbox and PC. I think that it will have an impact, because I think that's a lot of reasons, or that is a key point why people do buy Xbox, is to keep up with Halo as opposed to PlayStation. So I think that, yes, they will definitely take a hit from it. Will it tank Microsoft? No, they've got enough stuff out there to keep them going for a while. But that's a great question, Spencer, and thanks for asking, my friend. Our next question comes from Pat Canny, and Pat asks, are you going to do everything wrong with for the mobile Halo games and Halo Wars? So, for those of you who don't know, for those of you who don't tune into my Monday content, I've been working on a series called Everything Wrong with Halo. And I started with Combat Evolved. I did 2, 3, ODST, Reach. I just did 4. I did sort of a survey to see if the next one should be Halo 4 Spartan Ops, or should it be Halo 5? Because Halo 5 is going to take me a while to do. That may not be just a 30-minute video. That may be like a movie. And so I'm thinking about doing Spartan Ops next, just because it is a key point in the Halo universe. A lot happens between Halo 4 and Halo 5, and it would sort of address the question of who Jul Abdama is, what is his relationship with Dr. Halsey, you know, how did that position come up to begin with? And I feel like it needs to be told. And it's got 10 episodes, so it's basically a full campaign, even if it's more like Firefight than a standard campaign. So I'm thinking I'm going to do that next. But to answer your question, yes, I am planning on doing Everything Wrong with Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2. That is in the works. As far as Spartan Ops and Spartan Assault, that's a bit more difficult. I could see it. I mean, they're very short games, first of all. Spartan Assault does have a story between Halo 3 and Halo 4 that I could probably work with. But Spartan Strike is a bit of a different thing. Remember, Spartan Strike didn't really have a story. It was basically a series of simulations. I know technically the first one was too, but at least you had characters in the first one. With this one, you're sort of just a random Spartan doing random things. I'm not sure it would work. I haven't technically beaten Spartan Strike yet. I've gotten through about 90% of the game, about maybe 75% of the game. I've gotten through, I think, all but one chapter. And so I still need to finish that, but I haven't really picked up on much of the story yet. If I can find something there, then yes, I'll do it, but I don't want to do one and not do the other, if that makes sense. So I hope that answers your question, Pat Canny. That's a great one, and thank you. Our next question comes from Joshua, and Joshua asks, do you think in Halo 6 they will bring back the old iconic characters like Shipmaster or Lord Admiral Hood? I think that's his name. All right, so I think they should, because there's still a lot of mystery there. What happened with the Shipmaster? We're now back in the Arbiter's world, and that was a huge part of Halo 2 and Halo 3 was his introduction to the Shipmaster, and how they started out being on kind of an opposition, but then they eventually became allies, and you see that in Halo 3. I'd like to see what happened to Shipmaster. I think he was an awesome character. And, you know, especially, you know, they could even do a game on that. Like, how did he get his half jaw to begin with? I think that'd be a cool concept. In terms of Lord Admiral Hood, yeah, I think we do need to know, because as far as I know, and I could be wrong on this, correct me in the comments if I am, I thought he was, like, the main guy in charge of the UNSC. Like that's why they called him Lord Hood, because he was, like, the overseer. We don't hear anything about him in Halo 4 or Halo 5 or even Spartan Assault or Spartan Strike, and they take place in that time period, or at least Spartan Assault does. So I think that we need to at least have an explanation is in terms of, are they still active? Do they still participate in the conflict? If not, did they retire? And I think that's a great thing to bring up. So hopefully we'll get to hear from them, or at least something about them in the next major Halo installment. So that's a great question, Joshua. Thank you. Our next question comes from King Shocky 18. Always good to see you, man. And King Shocky asked, if you had to choose one mission from Halo, which one is your favorite between Halo 1 through 5? It's kind of a tie. Personally, I think my favorite mission is the Ark in Halo 3, because it's so big, so vast. You have a lot of options. You have a lot of allies at your disposal. You got tanks, lots of huge battles going on in that one, and it speaks to me. You know, it's always fun to just go back and play that mission for fun. But I also love the mission 2 Betrayals in Halo Combat Evolved, because it's the biggest mission in the game, in my opinion, even bigger than its counterpart, Assault on the Control Room, just because not only is it night, I love that, but you have 3 factions that are not only fighting you, but each other at the same time. So you've got Flood versus Covenant versus Sentinels, and they also hate you at the same time. So it's always, and not to mention you get to fly a Banshee in that one too, which is the only mission in Halo Combat Evolved where you can technically do that. I mean, you can in Keys too, but only to escape, so I don't know if that really counts. But, so those 2 missions definitely. I think I like the Ark just a little bit more, but 2 Betrayals will always have a special place in my heart. So that's a great question, King Shocky, and thank you. Our next question comes from Matt Burkle. I like that name. And Matt asks, hey Tyrant, do you think that 343 should remove Ground Pound and Spartan Charge but keep the thruster pack? Thoughts? No, I do not. I actually, you know, it may not be the most popular opinion, but personally I like those features. I think it's unique. I think Spartan Charge sort of gives you like a super melee, whereas Ground Pound, you can utilize that for a number of different things. If you saw how I treated it on the mission Blue Team in Halo 5, I was actually able to use Ground Pound to travel great distances, and it looked cool, it felt cool, it gets you from point A to point B faster if you're on a different elevation. So personally, I like those features, especially I like them a lot better than armor abilities from Halo Reach and Halo 4. And I'm not really sure what else you would do with the thruster pack, you know? The only other things it really helps you do is sort of stabilize while you're trying to aim in midair, and it helps you run a little bit faster, sprint a little bit faster. So I think they should keep the thruster pack like it is. That's just my personal opinion, but why don't you let me know, Matt, in the comments below what you personally think. Our next question comes from my buddy Mark Sicola. Sorry, dude. Mark's a good friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's always on my streams. Sorry I can't pronounce your last name, so I'm going to call you Marky Mark. How's that? So Mark asks, Tyrannical Halo Q&A. Oh, I like you already. He asks, I know you had started reading Ghost of Onyx. I want to know if you decided to finish it when you have the time. If they gave Master Chief the similar story, endgame for Halo 6, would you be okay if they gave a parallel? I'm not really sure I completely understand the question. If you want Halo 6 to have a similar ending to Onyx. I know how Onyx ends. It's a shame, too, because I haven't finished it, and I already know how it ends, where they all end up in the Dyson Sphere. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't read it yet, but I know that Dr. Halsey and the Spartans end up, I think, basically, I don't know if I would apply it to Halo 6, but I think that it could possibly have its own game. A lot of cool stuff does happen in just the parts that I've read so far, and I think the ending might help tie in what happens with Blue Team and how maybe eventually they could end up linking back up with the Master Chief. So I hope that answers your question, Mark, and I appreciate it, man. Always good to see you here. Our next question comes from Big Denny 2. Oh, and Big Denny asks, Halo has been in a population death spiral. Oh, positive question. Since Halo Reach, and it has only gotten worse. In a previous Q&A session, you said you believe that Halo 6 will either make or break the franchise, and I agree. What I wanted to ask you is, how do we, or 343 in this case, solve this? What is our best shot at solving this crisis that is killing Halo? Is there a solution, or do you think that the answer is more complicated than that? Possibly because it requires more than a single solution. Well, it does require more than a single solution. So let's sort of backtrack for a second here and talk about the population death spiral, because there's a few points that I want to make. First of all, there are a number of reasons for this. You have to keep in mind this does date back to Halo Reach. If you guys haven't seen my Halo the Rise and Fall series, I talk about this. It's actually on the front page of the site, right below everything wrong with Halo, so definitely check that out. And the reason why Reach was probably the first Halo game that wasn't a step forward. It was a sidestep. Bungie went in a completely different direction, and you know that may be a good thing for you, maybe a bad thing, it depends, but it altered a lot. You know, you had a lot of characters that quite frankly weren't the Master Chief. You know, you had some issues where it was sort of conflicting with already canon material, or what was thought to be considered canon at least. You had the armor abilities, you had a complete shakeup in terms of the weapons that were used. And so I think a lot of people were divided on it, especially when it came to the concept of armor abilities and armor lock and that sort of thing. And so right after that game was released, they had what we call the Great Halo Schism, when Halo changed hands from Bungie to 343 Industries. And so you had a population split. You had a lot of people sticking with Bungie. You had a lot of people sticking with Halo. You had a small pocket of people who tried to stick with both but couldn't really commit to one or the other strongly. And so that's part of the reason right there. Halo is never going to have the full strength that it used to for a number of reasons. But in terms of Halo 5, and I know that we're sort of banking on that right now, there are a lot of things that you can draw in parallel with Halo 2, and a lot of you like Halo 2, that's fine. I have probably an unpopular opinion about it on this site. I think it's the worst game in the Halo franchise for a number of reasons. Actman just did a video on this, and he actually pointed out some of my criticisms, even though he's a huge fan of Halo 2, while pointing out some others. And I'm actually going to dive into the Halo 2 thing a little bit more this upcoming week, so you get a full understanding of why I loathe the game so much. I've explained this before in other videos, but I know we've had probably about 10,000 more people subscribe to the site since the last time I seriously talked in depth about Halo 2. So, in terms of things, I look at both games as sort of being 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And what do I mean by that? So, Halo 2, in my opinion, was inferior to Combat Evolved. It added a lot of good stuff, okay? It added things like dual wielding, vehicle hijacking, a lot of new enemies, new weapons, but here's what it didn't do. First of all, you had missions that weren't as open world as Combat Evolved. They were more linear, more scripted. It didn't help that there was a legendary difficulty that was extremely tilted against the player, or in Bungie's words, cheating. And that did not feel good. You had super powerful elites, one-shot kill jackal snipers. You had scenarios where you would spawn into a mission and could literally die before you could even see your reticle. And that's insane to me. You also had unpolished graphics. I mean, if you remember back in the day of Halo 2 when it first came out, you know, graphics would have a hard time loading on the screen. It would slow down the frame rates. And even then, the graphics seemed sort of matted compared to Halo Combat Evolved. And what I found out is they were trying to make it bigger than they could. They had time constraints. They had a lot more planned for the game. It didn't help that they sort of mismarketed the game too. You know, we saw E3 2003 where we were in this big city and that never happened. And they sort of overplayed the Earth hype. All of the marketing was about saving Earth, and it only ended up being about 2 missions. And then you end up going somewhere else, then it ends on a to be continued note, and now we fast forward to Halo 5, and we see a lot of parallels with Halo 2. Sure, you could draw parallels in terms of how you had a split campaign between 2 players, you had a to be continued ending, but I noticed with Halo 5, it suffered a lot of the same issues. You know, they released half a game, they didn't include split screen, a lot of that stuff, and I feel like it was mostly because they just didn't have the time for it. That was a big thing. They took these games, they wanted it to be bigger than they were, and just the 3 years of development wasn't enough to make it happen the way they intended for it to happen. So, having said that, and how it relates to your question, Big Denny, is they're not making that mistake right now. They've obviously pushed off the release for the next major Halo title, and I think the reason for this is because Microsoft and 343 realize that it's better to take longer and release a complete title that people can love and cherish and play for years to come than just to try to rush it out as soon as possible just to get some numbers in that bank account. If you're going to release a game, it's better to take longer to release a better game than to just, release it faster so that you can see those dollar signs faster. Halo 5 tanked for a number of reasons. And ironically, like with Halo 2, it took some steps forward while also taking steps back. It made a lot of improvements to the enemies of the game. It made a lot of improvements to the weapons, in my opinion. And even the missions themselves were bigger, but the story was fucking awful. And it just baffled my mind, on top of the fact that they released only half a game. No Forge, you only had a couple of multiplayer modes. It just, again, and split screen on top of that, I'm just, I feel like if they had taken another year, we would have gotten a better game, and I can attest to that, because the Halo 5 that we got a year after its initial release was far superior to what they had on release day, on launch day. Now we've got Forge, we've got Warzone, Firefight, we've got a ton of different stuff on there, a huge variety of weapons and vehicles. It's nice, and so to answer your question, I feel like the big thing they need to do here is not rush it. Take their time. Don't release the game until it's finished. On top of that, they have to sort through a sea of garbage comments, okay, and suggestions. Keep in mind that they get a sea of this, a flood, if you will, of comments and criticisms, and they have to sort through that shit, because I have to do the same thing on this site. When people give me tips on what to do to further improvement, I have to look past all the "your site sucks, delete your channel, kill yourself," to actual constructive thoughts that say, it might be better if you do this. What you do is fine, but this might be better for you. And look at those comments and take them into further consideration. Take serious people from the Halo community, people who are reputable, and can actually give constructive criticism that might be able to work in. Listen to those people, and hopefully that'll make a better game in the future. I think that that's what they're doing. I think that we have a great shot at making Halo 6 the best Halo in the Reclaimer saga. And I'm rooting for 343 on this one, and I hope you guys are too. So I hope that answers your question. Like I said, it's not just one solution, it's going to be many, but I think they're on the right path. And our final question of the week, our star question of the week, comes from Ethan Vandetta. I love that name. And Ethan asks, do you think 343 will take a look at SPV3 and take some of those ideas into Halo 6 or other future games? Love your videos. Keep it up, man. I appreciate that, Ethan. Thank you. Let me give you the takeaway for SPV3 and why it's so awesome, okay? These folks, the CMT community, Masters Elite and his folks over there, what makes SPV3 so great is they were able to take a masterpiece and make it even better. And that's not an easy thing to do. SPV3 is very busy. It adds a lot of new stuff to it. New weapons, new vehicles, new enemies, new entire sections of missions, new objectives in those missions, and even rebuilding some from the ground up. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of study, a lot of skill to do. And it takes, what makes this interesting is they were able, the big takeaway is that they're able to implement a lot of new stuff without drastically changing the old. And that's a very complicated thing to do, and a lot of, it's something that a lot of game companies and games have a hard time doing with their sequels. How do we make something better without completely rewriting the formula and taking that risk? And SPV3 manages to do that. They manage to implement these new things into the game without making them feel like they're shoehorned in there, making them feel organic to the experience, and making the game genuinely feel like a director's cut of Halo. If they can apply that to future titles, basically implementing new things without making it seem like a completely new thing, off-the-rails experience, that could actually make a great Halo game or games in the future. What they need to take away, what they need to look at is how they did this. How did they make it so that it wasn't just something thrown into the game at random, something just to make it harder or slightly more interesting? How did they make Halo Combat Evolved an even better game? And that's why I've said in both of my reviews for SPV3, both when they released the first half, and then of course the final edition, which again, you can look at both on this site, they need to hire them. They seriously need to hire them, and even if it's not for writing or even design, which I think they designed everything great in SPV3, but just how they were able to implement it so perfectly in the game. I still felt like I was playing Combat Evolved, but a new version of it. Something a little bit better and fleshed out. And if they can apply that to the next major Halo title and ones to come, there could be a strong future for Halo, and not just for the next title, not just for what I call Halo Reclamation or Halo 6, but it could keep the series going for years to come. And I hope that answers your question, Ethan. That's my take on it, and that does also bring a close to SPV3 week right here on MythicTyrant.com. So what did you guys get your take from that? What do you think about SPV3 and how that can be applied to future games? Do you want to see more enemies? Do you want to see more things implemented in a way that's more organic? Or do you want a return to old form or something new and different entirely? You can let me know in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at MythicTyrant. A link to my Twitter feed can be found in the description below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, I have more great content every single day right here on MythicTyrant.com. All you got to do is click that subscribe button, and you can also keep up with all your latest news for the Halo franchise. Thanks so much for watching, guys and gals. I'll catch you right back here next time. Have a great weekend. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.